Namaste. My name is Preity Upala, and I am a global thought leader and a multimedia personality. Welcome to my podcast, The Preity Experience. Join me as I explore some of the most fascinating and crucial issues that affect our world today. I take a unique global perspective on these issues, and the very foundation of my insights is humanity and spirituality. I'm Preity Upala, and welcome to the Preity Experience.
Namaste, Adab, Sat Sri Akal and hello. My name is Gaurav Sharma and I welcome all the viewers of TAG TV across the world to this special edition of India Talk. In today's edition, we would talk about the increasing influence of feminism in India. We would try to compare the feminist movement which started in the West, particularly the US, with our own Indic form of feminism, that is the Swaroop of Shakti. And to discuss this in detail, we have a very special guest on our show today. She is a former Miss India International. She was born in Dubai and has lived in India, Australia, UAE and France. She has worked in Bollywood and Hollywood. She is an ambassador for GWEN, Global Women's Empowerment Network, and Black Pumps Inc., which is a black women leadership organization. She is an international keynote speaker and an astute political commentator and has spoken on forums such as World Economic Forum and Horasis. Her articles are published in The Observer, Times of Israel and Times of India. Some of you might have guessed it already. I am talking about Preity Upala. Welcome Preity to this latest edition of India Talk, and we were discussing this offline as well, and then I would like to bring the context and the setup for this particular talk. So in this globally connected world, an average Indian urban youth, they usually look up to the West, and especially in terms of feminism. A lot of urban youth in India, they get influenced by the West. So maybe you have spent so much time outside of India. You've been to you live in the States. You've spent time in Australia and other places. So maybe first of all, why don't you introduce us to the Western feminism to our audience? And I think it would be applicable to our audience who are who's living in places like US and Canada and in Europe. So why don't you begin with the basic definition of Western feminism, how it all started, and give us a brief introduction to the system.
Well, namaste, Gaurav, and namaste to India Talk. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Always wonderful to have these very important conversations. Yes, this is definitely a very hot potato of a topic, and it's going to be so for many more years to come, and has been, I think. And I just think that the way that the world is moving towards, I just think that women's rights and equality, balance, parity, agency, empowerment, especially of, marginalized societies or, communities, it's going to be so pivotal moving forward. So it's funny that probably thousands of years ago, I think there was much more equality among the genders, at least in some civilizations. I can certainly, as we speak, I'll talk a little bit on the Hindu civilization or the Indus civilization. I think things were quite different then. But post-Enlightenment and, when all the different organized religions came into form, I think things are quite different. So the feminist movement in the West is definitely a worthy movement. It's extremely important. I think that the game changed for women after the the birth of the birth control pill, because then women realized that they could actually have it all, that they could now also go out, earn, work, and sort of make decisions on their own. So although it gave them, for the first time, at least in the postmodern sort of world, they knew that they had more power and agency than ever before. So it gave them a lot of choice, which was great. However, I think that what they weren't told was that there will be compromises and negotiations, and you have to maneuver around it. I think the picture that they were painted was that you can be a superwoman, and I think that media, even books and TV, Hollywood, movies, Bollywood, all of these, even today, they sort of keep painting this picture that you can be superwoman and you can have it all without compromising on anything. And that's simply not true. And I think there is an incredible level of unfulfillment, I would say, and disappointment that women are feeling because they're subconsciously realizing that I think that they've been sold a bridge all these years, and they're trying to find a way to make it work. But the feminist movement in the West was about equality, things like equal pay for equal work, which is it should be and is technically enforced in most places around the world. I think it's important to note that things like income and wages are two different things. For the same level of skill set, yes, you should be, and you will, and I think you are in many cases paid the same as your male counterpart. But I think other things like your choices, taking time off, your priorities, or sort of not wanting to work 90 hours a week for the next 20 years, these sort of decisions that women would probably prefer to make, they do come into account when you look at, the entire lifespan of an employee. And I think business owners will, if they're being honest, they'll say we value the person who is always going to be there and is willing to go that extra mile. And I think women simply don't want to make those choices, and that's totally valid. I think it's madness not to. So it's to get back to your question, started off on the right foot. It's incredibly important. And finally, with the vote as well, women being able to vote and also run for office and so many wonderful things. I think we've come a long way. However, I think the problems that we will discuss it's a different category. So no one is saying that this wasn't a worthy movement and that it shouldn't be, we should keep striving for even more parity, because it is possible. I don't think we have it yet. We may never have it, but I think we can do better than even what we have today in the coming decades, for sure.
So understanding this, how do you see right now, the situation in India? I mean, when I especially look at the urban youth, the girls are taking a cue definitely from the West. So what kind of comparison would you see as to what happened in the West, let's say in the 70s, and what is happening in India right now?
So this is such a dangerous game that is being played, I think, in India and in probably other parts of Asia too, but specifically India, because we read so much, English language books and magazines, newspapers, and watch a lot of the content, especially in English. I think it's a different kind of, when you consume it in that way, you understand these concepts on a kind of a very different level. I think the biggest issue here is firstly looking at the West as if that's the only framework that is around and one that works, which is not true. And then also secondly, taking norms and frameworks, concepts from the West and superimposing them onto your, like Indian society on an already existing framework, and then pretending that we can make that work, that it's as applicable here as it is there. That's not true. And also, I think not realizing that perhaps what you had, your indigenous kind of framework of way of life or understanding on especially this topic was maybe perhaps more sound and more holistic than even what the West is offering right now. And unfortunately, because our school system doesn't really teach us our own history, doesn't go back to the ancient wisdom or wisdom systems that have worked, unless the West somehow finds out about it and then they propagate it and then it comes back to India, like in the case of yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, all of these things, I mean, it's beautiful that now so many Indians in India are yoga teachers and they're spiritual teachers and all of that wonderful stuff, especially I think Ayurveda as well. I'm pleased to see that finally. I really think they need to own that narrative because it is their narrative to own. But it hasn't happened yet in terms of, things like philosophy, concepts, and so on. So I think what I see in India, social media or even speaking to people, there is sort of a lack of understanding, acknowledgement of perhaps what is actually Indian or the Indic way or the Indic framework, and then just thinking that the West has these great norms that we should all aspire for, not taking into account perhaps where the left has derailed, the West has derailed, and where it's not working. I think there is a bit of a denial there in the West as well as in India, especially in the sort of these liberal circles of the blind spots. And quite frankly, that it's kind of going in the wrong direction. It's causing more problems now than problems that it was supposed to solve. And not understanding that there are better ways to tackle this and not be willing to have you need to have humility, I think, to go back to the drawing board and look at what the ancient, teachers have taught us, especially I think in our case, it's sort of in our DNA, right? We don't have to go far. It's there. It's all there. It's all pervasive. Whereas someone here in the West, I find a lot of them going kind of around the world, finding themselves, and finally they land in India, and finally they're getting to grips with the reality of, life and meaning of life and spirituality and all this wonderful stuff. But I think for Indians in India, they don't really have to go far. It's right there in front of you. I think they're either not seeing it or they're choosing not to see it. I think they've been very brainwashed of course, in academic institutions and with their so-called thought leaders and so on. So they need to, I think, get contrarian opinions, read different kinds of content, maybe read different kind of books, different authors, maybe go outside the box, think outside the box. But it is dangerous because I think if we don't fix this now in India, several decades from now, it might be too big of an issue. So it's still nascent. So this is a perfect time to actually tackle this, because I think the progress using these Western norms, there's been some progress, I guess, on Indian society, but it's not like it's been so exponential that we have passed the point of no return. It's been slow to really adopt those norms, which is actually a good thing. I think it's not too late, actually. We have more than enough time to kind of have an honest conversation about this and rectify it before it gets out of hand.
I think you rightly said that. I think it is our colonial mindset, which is still imbibed so deep in our blood, possibly, that we are not, whatever comes out of West is taken as is. And there's no I would say Purva Paksha, or there's no research or analysis which is done on what is happening in the West. Whatever this movement was, definitely it helped a lot of women in the West. But what is the next step? You move to the to it's like a ladder, right? So you step up your game, and then what next? So what is happening in the West could also should also be told to the people across the world. But unfortunately, the movies, the Hollywood movies, the Netflix series, they don't show all that. They just they just just probably show only one aspect of the situation. So, but to to go on on this other line, first I would like to ask you this one more question. What do you think India can particularly learn from this particular movement? Yes, it has impacted a lot, but definitely there are a lot of good things as well. So, as a theory, what can India learn from the West?
Yeah, that's a great point. And look, there's good to be learned from every civilization and every time period. We are supposed to take the best nuggets of wisdom and the best practices across time and adopt them. And I think the West is actually very good at adopting the best practices from the East, for example. But I think here in the East, what we do is we don't just take the best practices from the West. I think we take everything, and we just think that this is going to work, and that we must just sort of make it all work somehow, and it just doesn't work that way. I think, when we look at Western movements and Western ways of thought, actually for an Indian person, it should remind them of the kind of power that we've always had, especially for women, from the eyes of, from a Vedic perspective, men and women have always been considered equal. I think, I think India is the only country in the world that has an official third gender. So while in the West, the people are scrambling to fight for trans rights and all of that hot topic right now, in India for thousands of years, we've actually accepted this community absolutely as a integral part of our fold. And even to this day, they are an integral part. And it's hereditary, it's generational. They have their place in society. I think in some ways we're proud of it. Things like that. And also, I think it's important to note that even with the LGBTQ, again, Hinduism or India per se has never had a problem with that. We've had that for a long, long time. We've accepted it. We respect all beings. And, nobody imposes their views on the other as well. There's no encroachment of any space, so that's great. But it's funny that the regressive attitudes, or even from a legal perspective, the sort of the criminalization of, all of this kind of sexuality, it came from the British. It didn't come pre-colonial, 200 years ago. We didn't have these issues in India, but after the British left, when we were drafting our constitution, again, we just superimposed I guess it's either the Irish or the British constitution, and we just thought we'll just make this an Indian constitution now. But I think we forgot were things that were not working, and this sort of homophobia and intolerance towards, especially LGBTQ and so on. It really came from the British, the empire mindset, and we should have known better to not include that in our constitution. And when it finally got decriminalized, everybody celebrated, but people didn't realize that it's like we're just going back to how it used to be. We didn't get rid of an Indian law, we got rid of a British colonial law. So I think things like this, people need to realize that some of the most regressive things in Indian society are not even Indian. We're just blindly, copying from the West. It's okay to copy good things. It's not okay to copy the things that don't work. I think women do have a voice. And I think that's what maybe they can get from the West. They have a voice and they must exercise it. And you will not be, punished and penalized in any way if you do so. And you must speak for yourself and your experiences and so on. I think it's the West can remind us to look at what we've always had and also not to lose what we have, because I think what we have is quite precious.
So, very interestingly, you spoke about the uh, Indian form of feminism. So, interestingly, we know that Shiva has a Ardhanarishwar roop, right? So, now moving on to this aspect, how do you how would you relate now, and a regular Indian woman, and bring her to the concept of Shakti? We all worship Shakti in different groups. Lakshmi, then we have Saraswati. We have all all goddesses in our Hindu history and mythology. So how would you relate this to an average Indian woman?
It's so important. I think what we have is so precious. So Indic feminism, or dharmic feminism, as I like to call it, is has been around for ever since the beginning of time, thousands of years. It's intact, which is beautiful, and it is actually in our DNA. I think Indian women inherently have this kind of incredible feminine quality that you just don't find in the West. When you look at an Indian woman, she could be a CEO, but she's wearing a beautiful sari, and there's just something very soft about her. Whereas here, it's you almost have to look like a man to sort of have that kind of power. I think the picture that has been sold here is that real power is something that is really in the male form, and you need to sort of think, talk, speak, almost look like that to be that high-flying executive, or that thought leader, or that change agent, or political leader, so to speak, which is simply not the case in India. Even when you look at political leaders, we've had female presidents, prime ministers, we've had female warrior queens thousands of years ago. I think as far as the goddess aspect is concerned, this is something I'm very passionate about. Goddess worship is absolutely central to Indian culture, to Hindu faith. It's the last goddess worshipping practice, tradition, faith in the world. So we must cherish it, because if we get rid of that aspect in Hinduism, or if something happened to Hinduism itself, I think there won't really be any goddess worship happening anywhere. And I think the beautiful thing in Sanatan Dharma is the goddess is more powerful than the god. We have more goddesses than gods, actually, and even the gods are terrified of the goddesses, and they uphold her. And in fact, the whole point, I think, of our perspective is that the man should uphold every woman in society, like the Lakshmi and the Parvati and Saraswati and so on. That's really what it should be. And he certainly upheld his consorts and his own goddesses and so on. And also, I think the beautiful thing about Shakti is this wonderful dance of Shiva Shakti, yin yang, black and white. We have both masculine and feminine within us, and we are meant to marry the two and have the yoga of the two within us, right? There's no picking and choosing. It's not you take this or take that only. You can actually have it both. I think the most wonderful thing about a Shakti is there is no encroachment of the other's rights and space. In order for me as a woman to be powerful and strong, I don't need to remove the male who is in a position of power right now, because I don't think my power comes from taking it from someone else. Yes, in society, we have all been, repressed, subjected. I think probably women around the world have had their power taken away from them. They have had their voice silenced, and they have been told what their position in society is. I'm not denying that. Having said that, from an individual level, and then of course on a society level, we need to break free of that, because if we do that, then we are no better than the man, right? I mean, if you are going to do what has been done to you, then it's like the whole victim perpetrator thing. You become the big bully yourself if you've been bullied. That doesn't, the Gandhi's great saying, right? Eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind. That is so true. And I think he has this beautiful karmic he had the beautiful karmic understanding of, all of this, and he understood, tit for tat does not work. Everybody suffers when you do that. So I think for us, we can, power is within us. It's always been there. It's never going to go away. You just have to remember it and express it. And, also the dance, the collaboration, you're supposed to engage with the Shiva energy, with the divine masculine. We are supposed to have this wonderful dance. It's not me or you, it's us, and I think that's the beauty of Shakti. Shakti can teach a lot, I think, to the world. I just think it's a matter of people, ambassadors, thinkers, authors, journalists, movie makers to share this Shakti aspect to the world, share the concept of dharmic feminism to the world, because it's definitely there. It's practiced, I would say, in several parts of the world when you look at Asia. But I think in the West, it's still very foreign. Mm-hmm. And they also, maybe they have a distorted view of Indian feminism or the state of the feminine and state of women's rights in India. I think these activists and NGOs have a really distorted version where they're not even taking into account the aspect of Shakti. They're looking at some societal issues very different, and they are conflating different things and coming up with these kind of, a world view, I think, of what's going on in India, which is really not the truth at all. So I think it's up to us to educate them and the world. And also, I think I keep coming back to narrative. This is our narrative to be had, right? It's our story. It's about us. I think it's high time that we actually be the voice of that narrative and own it, because if you don't, they will speak for you. And correct. I think what they are speaking for you is not the truth, and it's not positive. So right. I think we must kind of get wisen up in that respect.
So yeah, you very rightly mentioned that in Hinduism, the gods also revere the goddesses, the Swarup of Shakti. So it just reminded me of one incident from Ramayana where Lord Rama and Ravan, they are having a fight, and then the fight goes on for days, and then Sri Ram decides to pray to the goddess, to the Shakti, and he is blessed, and then he kills Ravans, and the story is like that. Now I've heard that before I go to the next question, I've heard that you are writing a book on this topic. So would you like to share something about that upcoming book of yours?
Yes, I am so excited. Obviously, I've got several different books in my mind and in the pipeline that I'm working on. But this particular book, I just think it's so timely and important. And it is about Indic feminism, Shakti, about dharmic feminism. But I look at it from a Western lens. I first look at the West and the feminism movement in the West, what's going on, the blindfalls, the pitfalls, the current state of that movement, where we are headed, what will happen if we don't kind of get back on track, because I think we have derailed massively. It's been hijacked by all kinds of entities, and they are morphing it into something unpalatable, and also something that's not really what it's meant to be. When you have feminists like Germaine Greer, who are no longer considered feminists by this group, I think we have a serious problem, because these are people who have fought for women's rights for decades, much of their life. So taking a look at the Western state of feminism today, and then comparing that with an Indic framework, dharmic feminism, and seeing how it's different, seeing what sort of voids it could fill, where it could come in. And I really think it's an introduction. So to the Western woman, it is an introduction to the concept of Shakti and to the concept of dharmic feminism, and how they could adopt it, just like yoga and meditation and all those wonderful Vedic philosophies that I think the West is obsessed with right now, which is great. And the second part of it, and this could really be another book actually, is the letter to the Indian woman to really cherish and uphold what she has already in her culture, and to not let it go. Because I think what we have is precious. And if we lose that, then we are really going to be in the abyss and in the deep void, and there's no way out because there won't be other frameworks, and we'll just suffer what the rest of the world is suffering. And I just think it's a different form of suffering as well, because in the West, there are so many ways that women can I don't reach out to get help, really fight it, so to speak. In India, it becomes very tricky. You have there's a lot of societal pressures that probably one doesn't have, and family pressures that one doesn't have in the West, right? So here, there's more than one element to factor. It's not going to work out for you to sort of fight this thing on your own. And there's nowhere to go to. I think the agencies are not really equipped, I think, to get you to where you need to be on this level. So that's my book, and it's like the message is twofold, I think. And I'm very excited. I can't wait to see what the response is going to be. I'm sure there'll be maybe some people who are not sure, and I'm sure there'll be many inquisitive people, and probably many people who agree. I'm sure there'll be people in the Indic world who do see this as a fact and a truth, and they see the validity of sharing this incredible framework with the world.
Great. I wish you all the very best for this new book, and I wish that I get a free copy of that once it is.
You will. You'll be the first one.
Thank you. Now, moving on to my last question on this topic. What would be your message to a young girl, let's say in like a 15 or 16-year-old girl, who is watching the Western movies, Netflix, and things like that, and is getting influenced, and is at the same time is based out of India, and has a lot of societal pressure. So how do you think she should handle this situation? And should she move back to reading our own scriptures, going back to looking at what we have, and possibly finding a cue from there, what actual what actual feminism would mean to her, and how she could lead her life for success?
Great question. Yes, I think the young Indian girl is at a very exciting point, fork, I think, in her journey, but also the journey of new India. I think India is sort of setting forth on a very, very exciting new path. It's a resurgent India, a strong India, an India that knows who she is and where she comes from. And I think this is the right kind of India that we need. So she's a part of that. And I think it's important for her to know what is in her culture, what has been, upheld for thousands of years. The oldest living, continuing civilization in the world is actually the Hindu civilization. So, and I think we're the last remaining as well. So this is very important to not lose it, know where you come from, specifically on this topic of power and agency, balance, parity. I think you must read, go back to the scriptures. I think there's also many stories. There's many writers and speakers that speak on this topic in the Indic world especially. So find them and do a lot of reading. Read the Western books too, but read the Indic writers too. Just understand, I think, even when you look at our epics as well, they also have a lot of great knowledge and a lot of wisdom too. So look at that, and then just be flexible, see what works for you, and adopt that. But I think you should understand that, especially Hollywood, Bollywood, TV, commercials, these are make-believe. They are not the real world. They are not real life. They often paint a fantastical picture of reality which is simply not true. They're quite illusory. I think we have been fed a diet, especially in India, of Bollywood for so many decades that have painted a picture of life that's just not true. So, watch different content, or you can enjoy a movie, but know that it's just entertainment. It's pastime, really. It's nothing more than that. Don't get anything more than that, than what is just being shown to you. I think that's important. And if you have no qualms about it, if you're very detached with Bollywood and all of that, industry and music and so on, then I think you'll be fine. You'll understand that that's just somebody's creative expression, and you can appreciate it and move on with your life. And that's not some kind of life that is actually able to manifest, and probably you don't want it to manifest because they don't show the other side of the dark
The
side, so
dark
to
side.
speak. I think what Bollywood is going through right now, all the dark side has come up for everyone to look at, and I think of all times in India, sort of post-independence kind of life cycle, this is one time where I think you need to really shake yourself, wake up, smell the coffee, and just know what's real and what's not real. There's been a lot of Maya, I think, that has been thrown at Indians for 70 years from our political class, and I think it's time to discard that, and don't be attached to that Maya of what India is and who Indians are and what life is about. So I think we're at a very, very interesting point. So for that young girl, this is exciting. And just be positive about it, because I think people like to paint a doom and gloom picture, especially to youth in universities and schools. It's not true. It's a beautiful world out there. There's much beauty to be enjoyed and to express. So you should always focus on the positive.
Yeah, I think this movement actually requires the support not only from women. It also requires a substantial amount of support from the men. So I think, and for an Indian, especially based out of in India, they need to go back to reading. I think, especially in the young readers, I would say that your reading horizon should have lot many more books. You should maybe read different sort of books, and that could give a different perspective to the life. I mean, like you said, movies are just illusory. They're all Maya, and we all have to come up and move ahead of this Maya and then clear the clouds and see the sun. And I think India is definitely moving in that direction, where we would see all that. I think on this note, I would like to end this session. And it was really, really exciting talking to you about feminism, the Indic way. And I would look forward to speaking to you in further editions.
Well,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you, Mr. Gauravji. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on your wonderful show. Thank you to your audience for listening. Please reach out to me. I'm all over social media. Please send me a tweet or find me on Facebook or Instagram or my YouTube channel. Look at a lot of, I've written a lot of articles, there's a lot of video interviews as well. So just reach out, love to hear from you, and look out for that book. I think it should be, maybe hopefully next year it'll come out.
Yeah, I would say all the viewers could reach out to Preity if they have any questions regarding this topic. They could reach out to her on YouTube. I think you have your own Facebook page as well, which is a professional page, right? So you could reach out to Preity if you have any questions on that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste.